Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. If we just stand at ease for a moment, we're waiting on some additional information, so just be at ease. All right, ladies and gentlemen, go ahead and settle in. This will be our 1 minute warning. Wow. That worked. I want to thank everybody for coming this afternoon and convene and call to order the House Higher Education Committee for an agenda this afternoon. We will not be taking actions on items, but as is our posture and policy, we're going to make sure we get the information that I would ask the committee to take action on, or may ask the committee to take action on in the future, so that folks have the information to move forward, on which we can move forward. With that, our intention today is to hear changes that have been made on Senate Bill 380, Senate Bill, 390, Senate Bill 386, and Senate Resolution 579. With that, and we'll be doing that, we'll be talking about the changes, and we've had public discussions on these items before, so we will not be discussing this further today. Although if anyone has any comments on that, they feel free to get them to the higher ed office, and we'll get them to the committee. With that, I want to start first and ask Senator Walker to. You can come forward, Senator, or you can stay there, and I can talk about. You want to come to the seat or to the podium? Yes, sir. I want to, if the senator will allow, I want to thank him for his patience with the committee as we work through the item he had before us. You should have another bill before you for Senate Bill 390 LC 1940. And I would like to let the committee know the changes that were offered in this substitute. Specifically on the findings on line 22, we identified, to be more specific, the current president of the association in that definition, so as not to too broadly establish that finding. We then worked with Senator Walker to on line, what was previously on line 48 of the bill, use of taxpayer or privately donated funds. We have stricken privately donated, so we are just limiting the use of taxpayer funds. Now, the chair and the senator and I have discussed. There was some question earlier that if privately funds are intermingled or commingled into accounts. I'm not an accountant. I don't have an accounting degree, but when funds are commingled, they go to the least, the most restrictive use of the funds when any amounts are commingled. So to be clear, if private donations go into a fund and are not properly accounted for, they're not private donations anymore. They are part of the government funds. But in line 48, it previously said or privately donated. That has been stricken. Also, at the bottom of that in section 2, it used to read American Library Association or its affiliates. That was potentially going to impede some of our institutions from working with other groups that happen to be affiliates of the ALA, but we wanted to be careful not to impact our institutions of higher learning. So that came out. And then privately donated funds over on in section 5 on line 87 has been struck. And again, I would reiterate that if the funds are commingled, they all go to the least use. Does that? I'll go to the senator. Does that properly reflect what we had talked about?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman, and I appreciate you working with me on this, and appreciate all the time the committee has spent on this issue. And I hope we can get it out of committee soon. But I thank you for working with me on it.
Thank you. Representative Clark, do you have a specific question? Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question is on line 67. We still have the language of the affiliates also not being able to accept funds when it comes to the establishing, erecting, maintaining, or assisting in maintaining a public library. I'm concerned with affiliates still being there, that we are still going to be hindering our public libraries, especially our smaller, more rural library districts, from being able to maintain and assist in maintaining their public libraries, even if they're not getting the funds from the ALA.
Okay. Well, I'll just try to answer that with this and say that particular point in the bill was not brought to me as something that could impede our university system. So if the lady has could bring some information on that, I would get with the center or encourage you to do that, and we can address that. Are there other questions? Do we have in order here? Representative Holland.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I just want to make sure I understand the impact of the changes. So it might be for the senator or for you. When I had the similar concern about higher education universities being able to, for example, the law library at UGA being able to be a member of the Association of Law Libraries. When we have said that it is okay to be sending taxpayer money to the affiliates, would the law library at UGA now be able to be a member of the Association of Law Libraries? Would the library at Georgia Tech be able to be a member of the Association of Research Libraries? Because those were affiliates that would have been prohibited earlier. Has that been fixed with this language?
My understanding is this would allow them to continue that, and that is. Do you differ from that, Senator?
I would agree, and it's in the section of the bill that deals with the Board of Regents. So it is the University System of Georgia system that's the section that it was taken out of.
And that is regardless of taxpayer funds or private funds.
That's my understanding.
For the affiliates.
For any library in the state can be a member of any of the affiliates, and they can utilize taxpayer funds for that membership.
As is controlled by Code Section 544.
Okay, thank you.
We are blessed in this bill that we have several code sections that are affected. Chairman Dickey.
Just for the committee's information, been in contact last week or two with the Middle Georgia Regional Library Association, which covers 7 Middle Georgia libraries, most of them rural, and they have no association other than some accreditation with American Library Association, and they're fine with this bill. As far as I know, it will not hinder any kind of work they do in those 7 Middle Georgia counties as far as their library. So very, very neutral on this bill.
Thank you. Representative Jackson.
Maybe I'm misunderstanding. I'm looking. Oh, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was looking at line 47. Now, am I misreading, or is this saying that they shall not use any taxpayer funds for any material, services, or operation offered by the American Library Association or any of its affiliates, except that privately donated funds may be provided? So are we saying then that our libraries can no longer be a part of the American Library Association and they have to keep 2 sets of funds?
That portion of the bill, that is exactly how that reads. Yes, ma'am.
So is that to remain in, is this the reading and it will remain in there? You know, American Library Association has been in existence for a very, very, very long time, and I don't think we've had any problems with it. I just don't understand. Why are we punishing the American Library? And that's why I said I may be misreading because I'm just getting this. Why are we taking that? Why are we taking that out, except they will have to keep funding from 2 different sources?
Representative Jackson, that language has been in the bill since we've had it.
I know it.
And so what I'm going to ask you to do is your opinion on that bill is matters, but that'll be if we get to a point where we're moving the bill forward. I'm going to ask you to bring that forward in discussion. We're just going to take questions today on the changes.
Okay.
So
Thank
we can move on. I have
you.
one more question. Chairman Carpenter.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Chairman. This is really more of a comment. I appreciate your work and Senator Walker's work on this legislation. Obviously, I appreciate the fact that you isolated privately donated funds, because at the end of the day, this body's passed legislation that made sure that people that privately donate their money, that it can go to wherever the heck that we want it to. So I appreciate the legislation.
Okay, I was incorrect. We have one more. Dr. Clerk, I'll come back to you for a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to clarify. On line 49, it still says, the Board of Regents cannot use any taxpayer funds on any materials, services, or operations offered by any affiliates of the American Library Association. To my colleague's question, how does that allow them to still associate with the American Association of Libraries, the Georgia Public Research Library, all these different libraries, because it still says any of its affiliates in line 49.
At the end of line 49, except for privately donated funds that may be used.
Right, so they can't use taxpayer dollars for any of the affiliates as well?
Yes, ma'am. And again, I would say this to you, that is the information that I have gleaned from the Board of Regents, working with the senator, and I think the senator has worked as well, that to arrive at this language. If there's additional information, we'd be able to ingest it and move forward. If there are no further questions, that's the bill you have before you that has some changes, and we will thank the senator for agreeing to work with us on that. If there are other changes and we are back to take action, we'll do so. And have proper debate at that time. So with that, Senator, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
We're going to move along now to the next item. We have SR. We're going to go to SR 579. Senator Cowser, you want to join us? Well, I promise he was in the room earlier. Do it. Okay. Good afternoon, Senator Cowser.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee.
Shall I, or do you wish to, let me sound the items you'll be talking to us about, right?
Okay.
We'll be working from SR 579 LC 550316S, and then I think the gentleman has an amendment he wishes to talk to.
I do. And Mr. Chairman, I just want to thank you for having an open door with me in the last few days for us to talk this out. Committee, I've made it really, really clear, I think, throughout this process that my largest concern was that we take care of responsible gaming issues here, because I think there will be some problem gaming, and it's our obligation, if we're going to put this in front of Georgians, to make sure that we properly educate folks about the dangers and of getting hooked into too deep on gambling, and how to prevent that, the warning signs, and at the end of the day, treatment if we have some of those problems that occur. And I think just nationwide we're seeing that that's going to be a natural consequence. I have told y'all that I've been involved in this Nickel G's organization. State of Georgia is a member of it. It's the National Conference of Legislators from Gaming States. And as a board member, and Al Williams is also a board member, we came up with a national responsible gaming policy, sort of a template for what was best practices to be promoted nationwide. And I built those into our bills in constitutional amendment in the Senate. Part of that included having dedicated funding. Unless you have the resources to spend to educate, prevent, and treat, you know, it's just platitudes to say call 1-800-GAMBLE. And so I'm appreciative of you. That's why I've been so insistent of trying to get some dedicated funding for that purpose, of being receptive to that. And I'm also very appreciative Marcus Wiedauer has done a fabulous job. As I sort of contrasted and compared his version and mine, he had almost every single thing that's recommended by this organization, and I know he had to have gotten those guidelines to make it so thorough. And so I have a wonderful comfort zone that this addresses that concern. What this amendment that's before you does is create that, we keep using the word bucket, but it's really a separate fund that is a responsible gaming fund that will dedicate 15% of all the sports betting proceeds will go into that fund. And after negotiating with the chairman, we agreed, he had some concerns that, well, what if this does explode in popularity and there's $1 billion in revenue a year? Surely we wouldn't need $150 million for educating and preventing and treating. And I agree with that there would be a limit. So this caps it at $150 million. So 15% up to the first $150 million in sports betting proceeds will be dedicated to the responsible gaming fund. We would create that constitutionally, which is the only way you can dedicate funding, just like we do for the DOT, et cetera. And this let 85% of those proceeds from ground zero all the way even above 150 million go into the Educational Opportunity Fund, which is already existent in the lottery. That's where those buckets are for Hope, pre-K, capital expenditures within that Educational Opportunity Fund that's built in already in the lottery. And that would be spent as determined by the legislature and by the lottery board, their recommendations. So this, I'm very supportive of this. I would urge you to agree to this amendment because it does create that dedicated fund. That's the only significant change from this to the committee sub. If you want me to speak to the underlying one, the enabling act, I can do that now or wait till later, Mr. Chairman.
Let's see if we garnered a question. Does the committee have a question on the gentleman's amendment? It's AM 550060. Number 17, is that you, Whip Park? Whip Park.
So, thank you, Chairman Martin. Senator Cowser, I appreciate the dedicated funds for gaming addiction to be included in the constitutional amendment. I also greatly appreciate that we are moving back closer to the bipartisan compromise that passed out of the Senate when it comes to specific tiers. I had two questions. One, in our state constitution, do we have any other examples that have a specified amount, such as this $150 million amount that's listed in this CA, as far as you know?
None that I know of.
Okay, thank you.
And this is a cap, just it put a cap on it, basically, 15% up to $150 million.
And then two, Mr. Chairman, I'd be happy to talk about a potential amendment to the constitutional amendment that's proposed that I know my Democratic colleagues and I have been working on and would like at least for consideration to be proposed as we continue this issue, with the understanding that, again, bipartisan support will be needed in both chambers, even though the hour, of course, is late. But I do have an amendment ready to discuss at the appropriate time.
Yes, sir. If the gentleman will allow, I have a couple more questions. I'd like to go to them, but I'll come back to you. I'll give you that opportunity. Chairman Jaspers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Senator Cowser.
Hey, you, Chairman.
So I appreciate your frankness that we need this dedicated funding because it shows what an issue this will create if we were to pass sports gaming. And so this money, will it come out of the percentage that the state will get from the gaming? I can't remember what the percentage was. Was it 20%?
It was 25% under Chairman Wiedauer's bill.
25.
And so, yes, that would be the sports betting proceeds. It will come out of that.
So it'd come out of that. Has anybody thought of it coming out of the other side of that 25, making it 26%, so that it's not coming out of the money that the state's getting to do all the great things that this is supposed to be doing?
Right. Well, we thought about that in the context of the amount of that privilege tax, we call it. It's been all over the board. On the Senate side, we settled at 25% on certain types of bets and 20 on another type of bet that were less profitable. But we kind of built it in there, so to speak. But yes, you could add to the percentages and you could jigger that however you wanted to make it work.
Okay.
I mean, you could say, 20% to the state, 5% to this fund, but you're getting to the same place one way or the other.
Yes, sir. Well, I just didn't want to see it coming out of the portion that the state was getting, because the those who will be engaging this are going to be under the onslaught of advertising and et cetera to participate in this, and would be benefiting from it. So also should probably pay for that also. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I would point out that the proposal of the enabling legislation from Representative Wiedauer increases the tax percent from 20 to 25 on the House side. So your body would be demonstrating to make the industry pay more because of some of these associated costs.
Thank you.
Chairman Carpenter.
Sorry about that. I was just had a comment more than a question on the Whip Parks question. I think that we do that with transportation funding. The LMIG program is a percentage of the gas tax, I believe, and there's a floor of 10%. So we have done that in Constitution, I believe.
Number 27. Chairman Purple.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So 15% of the first $150 million is $22.5 million.
Right.
I don't know how much it costs to treat a problem gambler. Do we have? I don't, but someone might. Do you have any idea how much it costs to treat a problem gambler?
I understand it to be more expensive than a drug addiction problem because it's not treated by medication and it takes longer.
Okay.
If you're susceptible, let's just call it to this, the response in your brain is to produce endorphins. Just the same high you would get from stimulating it chemically, you get from that thrill of waiting to see does your team win or lose. And it's easier to combat that with medications to offset those endorphins, and it's more difficult when they're being generated emotionally rather than chemically.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it does take longer. Part of the reason for this that I probably didn't express well earlier is on the educational end of things, a lot of that is essentially advertising.
Mm-hmm.
Look how often the lottery advertises their games.
Oh, yeah.
You don't see them do an advertisement. You need to be careful. You shouldn't bet when you're under stress. Whatever the signs are for problem gaming. The indicators that you're developing problems, and that's what I envision is them telling, first of all, make sure you understand what's your likelihood of winning. What are the odds on these sexy little bets on a proposition, and then also to say, here are the warning signs. If you engage in sports betting, be careful that you don't chase your bets, don't increase your amounts, don't spend more than you can budget. And there are mechanisms to self-limit the amount you bet. And I love Chairman Wiedauer's bill that builds in all those things. I think it's going to take some time and some education through advertising to educate people about these things. So a lot of that money would be spent for that more so than treatment, I hope.
A follow-up? Because I was interested. I actually watched, was it yesterday? The debate in the Senate, on the floor in the Senate, and I saw some of the debate, and it was quite interesting.
You got to see me lose on that one, I thought.
I did, but I saw you give it a valiant effort. And one of the comments I think you made, it might have been someone else, is as it relates directly to this bill. So this responsible gaming fund is so some treatment, some advertising. Who would be responsible for the disbursement of these monies? Because in one sense, you are trying to encourage people not to engage in the behavior that is bringing in the revenue. And so if the people that are, it seems to be somewhat of a diametrically opposed position. On the one hand, we need, for lack of a better word, the preachers to do the advertising of the dangers of this addiction versus those others that show the really flashy side of, it's the Final Four and this is wonderful and get in on the wonderful times.
I have given this so much thought that I'm going to try to keep my answer short. I probably need to have, you could ring the bell when it's time. Glad the House has spent so much time on mental health, because I probably got some kind of psychosis going on or whatever. But,
I heard that yesterday too.
It's almost hypocritical. My belief is people are gambling in Georgia already. On sports, for sure. I bet you a lot of people in this room got something riding on the March Madness. And they're gambling on lottery. And the lottery corporation is spending about $400,000 a year on it. And I don't think that scratches the surface. And they're creating a problem. This now gives them a fund and a funding mechanism to do some real intervention and prevention and education meaningfully, and keep that money separate so that's all it can be spent for. This bill designates the lottery corporation will be managing that and following the mandates of our enabling legislation. If I had my way, there would be a separate corporation that was separate and distinct from lottery that would handle all the licensing, all the regulation, and all this treatment and prevention. Mm-hmm. And now that I've lost on COAMs, which in my world, those are slot machines. You can call them what you want to call them. We're about to have slot machines all over the state. The House has already approved it, and I couldn't beat it in the Senate. So you're going to have more problem gaming. There's going to be those people sitting there playing those slot machines. There's going to be people buying lottery tickets and probably betting, whether legally or illegally. And this treatment would help us. This funding would help us treat it one way or the other. I'm sorry I went so long, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
No, sir, and if I can, the senator's been, if members give me a bit of latitude to weigh in here too, the senator's been wonderful on this. And when we talked last time and we presented this resolution, I was searching for a way to find the way to dedicate it rather than to leave an open using your term bucket, that money might collect in and not be used. And I think the senator has come up with a wonderful way to do that here. And he brings up, and you do, the dichotomy that is the lottery now, whose job is to return as close to 35% of gross revenue to the educational fund as possible. And yet one of their missions is to, out of operating expenses, do a responsible gaming. Well, if I'm trying to get to 35, but I'm spending more money, you're at, like you said, you're at contrast. This takes all of that away because the money is set aside. And to some extent, Senator, wouldn't you agree that there are issues with, gambling, gaming, whatever you call it, with the lottery now that are not being adequately taken care of, that this money may take care of? It may not be sports betting at the beginning. It may be something else.
That is
it may be COAM
Yeah,
issues. I
right.
mean, it is
or
what
buying
it is.
lottery tickets.
Sure.
This would be any of that problem gaming.
So
is now
any of the responsible gaming, this is not just if you're involved in sports betting. This is if you have a problem game in Georgia. So we are creating a better solution than we have now for anyone. But I understand the gentleman's point. I think it's well made, and the senator is also probably right. As this evolves, it probably evolves into a department that may be part of DBHDD, and connected to basically deliver best practices, best distribution of capital and human capital, in order to mitigate issues. And be proactive, as the senator said. It's not simply dealing with things that have happened, but trying to help people understand you don't chase and so forth. Are there further questions for the gentleman on this amendment? Further questions? All right, Senator, if you would don't mind staying put, I'm going to let Whip Park talk about another idea he has. It's as I said, it's late in the game. I've heard a bit about it, but I'm going to let him have a couple minutes to talk about it. I think it's only fair.
Thank you,
Bart.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the opportunity to just highlight this proposed amendment for consideration with the understanding that, again, this is closer to what passed out of the Senate with bipartisan support. And certainly happy to provide copies of this amendment to all the members. My understanding is a copy of this has already been provided to Chairman Wiedauer, Chairman Martin, and Senator Cowser. I'll certainly make sure you get a copy of this as well. Essentially what the amendment would do would break it down into 5 boxes. 35% of the proceeds would go to citizens whose household income is below the median household income for Georgians, and so that would really address the needs-based component. The other 35% would go to citizens who reside in counties with a population below the average population. So again, 35% would go to rural Georgia and the students who are coming from there. 25% would go to voluntary pre-kindergarten. I would love to see us move closer to the position, again, that the state Senate passed, which prioritized pre-K funding. And so this proposed amendment gets moves in that direction. And then 5% would go towards gaming addiction and challenges, because it seems certainly clear that there's bipartisan support to ensure that there is dedicated funding for that purpose. So that's what the amendment would do. Again, it would help direct funds in a more clear and specific manner to, I think, some of the high needs of this state, both with respect to pre-K as well as with higher education. And so I hope that as this issue proceeds, there will be an opportunity again for this issue to be to garner bipartisan support, as bipartisan compromise will be needed on both the House and Senate floor. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you very much. The breakdown that you just gave, Representative Parr, was there anything in there? At the end, you said something about higher education. Is that stated in what you're talking about, and what percentage are you talking about that would go to higher education? And is it in there that it would be for anyone going to any of the schools within the university system of Georgia, or is it spelled out? You know, you understand where I'm coming from, right? Okay, is that in that? Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. So 70% in this proposal would go toward higher education, and half of the 70% would be focused on needs-based, which would cover all students in the USG, TCSG, as well as students attending HBCUs. And then the other 50% of that 70% would go towards students coming from rural Georgia.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, Whip, regarding the rural piece that you mentioned, would you be using the midpoint or the median? Because that will be drastically different when you've got one county that has 3,000 and one that has 1 million. The midpoint puts it vastly lower than the median would, I would think.
Yes, sir. So, Chairman Perkle, the word median household income is used for the needs-based component for rural Georgia.
I thought the rural there was a median too. I'm sorry.
So it's 2 parts. The first part looks at median household income, and it's anything below the median household income. The rural Georgia piece, the way in which that is calculated is that we would be looking at the average. Let's see. So it's written as who resides within a county that has a population below the average population of all counties within the state.
So median.
Yes, sir.
So the midpoint will put it substantially lower, I would think.
Correct. So
because you've got some that are skewing it higher.
Yes, sir. So median would be for what's applied to the rural Georgia piece.
Okay.
Chairman Carpenter.
I'm probably out of line, Chairman. I apologize, and I appreciate
I'll let you know.
I appreciate the amendment. And I understand where it's headed, and I know there's been a lot of negotiations around this legislation, but I would just challenge people to understand that this is an opportunity to tax a certain person that currently is probably not getting taxed in the lottery system, if you will, or raise funds for education from a person that's probably not participating in current lottery spending. And I just hate to see it all fall apart over how the money's going to be divided, because at the end of the day, I think it's going to provide funds that aren't being provided to education. In the long run, will be better for all Georgians. Just a thought.
Isn't that true? Number 26.
Thank you, Mr.
Chairman
Chairman. Mr. Whip, just to clarify, can you, can you be in both of those first two buckets you mentioned? Okay, thank you.
Are there any further questions for the gentleman? Any further questions? I see no further questions. We'll then, I want to ask everyone to take these items, into their safe place to take home and review and move on at this time to Chairman Wiedauer. And Chairman, if you would stay there, if Chairman Wiedauer don't mind, I know y'all have worked a bit on this responsible gaming language. So, Chairman Wiedauer, would you tell us about your proposition and read us the LC number so that we make sure we're on the right page?
Well, you about stumped me there. Thank you, Chairman. Make sure we're all on the same page. LC 365895S. I've got so many copies up here. I want to make sure I didn't put the wrong one in front of me. So,
okay, carry on.
In committee, we talked about this thoroughly. I noted the 5 line changes when we were leaving committee last week. Those just the lottery game striking that language that's been edited here. So really no other changes than the last time we talked about this. I will get into one amendment here in a minute, but first I want to start with a couple things. Senator Cowsert, certainly appreciate the conversation and the effort and your passion around ensuring the guardrails of dealing with problem gambling. Right now there are $0 going to this issue in the state. 0. So we're trying to, again, my passion here has been putting this on a legal market and allowing for those guardrails, taxing it appropriately. We've vetted this thing, my Lord, I have no idea how many times. And to my good friend, who I always refer to as my chairman, Chairman Jaspers, he took me under his wing when I got here as the vice chair of transportation, and has been an excellent friend. And I know he's passionate about making sure that this is handled the right way, even if it happens in a manner that he may not end up liking it. But when we vet something as long as we have, we kind of forget where we started and where we've ended. So just to address that, Senator Cowsert did mention, but I too do not want general funds to be pulled out to handle the problem gambling, which is exactly why we raised the tax rate from 20% to 25%. An additional 5% there would more than cover what we're putting to it. I'll speak to the I know this is 2 different bills, but the way that money is going to flow now, if the amendment put forward on the CA, $22 million, again, $0 was going to that today. North Carolina passed this measure. They only gave $2 million to problem gambling. So 11x on that certainly is, I think, very helpful and headed in the right direction. Also, there's discussion around advertising, the fact that suddenly there's going to be being inundated with this. I've long since argued we can't address some of that without codifying some language to be able to go after that. You can't watch any sporting event on TV and not see a commercial from DraftKings or FanDuel's if anybody thinks passing this is going to change the advertising we're going to see, it is happening so prevalently right now. And I'm merely making the argument that this will help get our arms around that. As far as the problem gambling, DBHDD currently runs that for the lottery right now. So this merely would give them an additional $22 million to help fund those efforts with mental health. I was on a show talking about this stuff the other day, and somebody brought up Athens and some of the tragedies we've had over there recently. And I always will bring up the 2 losses we had that week, which address some mental health issues. And DBHDD is doing the Lord's work there, and we certainly would love to be able to give them some extra support to be able to help people that are engaged in this right now and then find themselves in a bad posture. As far as bipartisanship goes, I don't know how I can be more bipartisan in this right now. I have had an open door policy. I have gone to bat for everybody on this board or on this committee. My door is still open and will be for the foreseeable future till I decide to hang it up here. When we start dividing the money, I mentioned the other day, I mean, how many different places do you want to take it? How many pet projects do you want me to entertain? One thing we seem to all agree upon and wrap our head around is education and making sure there's good education for our children. And that's where I've tried to keep this money. I have heard the compelling testimony and concerns over problem gambling. Senator Cowser clearly has carried that torch in an honorable way, and I'm happy to support making sure that we have funding that goes to that appropriately. In that light, the one change that you will see that is on your desk, Amendment 361012, it merely strengthens the language. What it does is it brings us in full compliance with responsible gaming guidelines, or NICL-Gs as it is, the acronym is stated. You see that we're just replacing Section D with, again, some stronger language, and replacing I with some additional language as well. So that one amendment is the only change, and again, it only addresses strengthening our abilities to get to help citizens that find themselves in a bad situation. Again, I would argue are currently doing that today. I often talk about geofencing and VPNs, but there are overseas companies right now that are operating in Georgia, and we don't have the ability to shut them down, and they're preying upon our citizens as we speak. So I want to commend the committee for really working with me and listening to all these issues. I appreciate everybody that's had input. I've, again, attempted to address every one of them as I could, and work so in earnest. So, Mr. Chairman, that's all I have. I think we've beat this thing as far as we're going to beat it, and I know this is a hearing only today, so I'll stand for any possible questions that might be out there.
Any questions for the gentleman? No, who's number 15 down there? Is that you, Chairman Jaspers? Yes, sir. Well, remember, he spoke highly of you. Chairman Jaspers.
Well, it's my great friend. I speak highly of him. And we are, like a number of y'all said, very proud of the work Chairman Wiedauer has done on this. Though I did was thinking, Chairman Wiedauer, we could do a dollar-for-dollar trade. I was thinking maybe for every advertising dollar spent in Georgia, we could have $1 for the cure for these folks. I was trying to think some outside the box that many other members have done. But thank you for your work.
I appreciate you.
Further questions for the gentleman? Further questions for the gentleman? Any further questions? I'm going to. Do you have either one of you have anything further?
I think he's covered it fine.
I do want to sound an idea. I've tried to be open with the committee on everything that we do, and try to provide everyone the information, and never ask you to vote on anything. I think the only time I've ever asked you to vote on anything, I did it through that you saw that day was through unanimous consent. So I'm gonna head in that direction again. Today, the constitutional amendment you had before you, or you have before you today, prior to the amendment that the senator has suggested that somebody on this committee would need to offer if they do, would set a process for creating a bucket, as he called it, to set aside constitutional, which is not in the bill today. We speak to responsible gaming. It's something that I think is needed, and if we get back to action on this tomorrow, I would ask you at that point to take action on it. And so I'm going to ask today, and if there is, I don't want to put anybody on the spot. If there is somebody that has an objection and wants more time, I want them to say so. You don't even have to call. I won't call you out if I just see a hand on one direction or the other. But if there's not an objection to adopting, if it's offered, I won't even ask for it to be offered if there's an objection to moving forward like this. If there's a single objection to offering that, we won't move forward. We'll wait. But if we do, it provides a framework to allow us to move faster tomorrow if there's any other things that we might choose to do. So with that, is there an objection if the committee would move forward? Maybe I just need to ask if there's a motion on that amendment, and then I'll ask for objection. I would do that. I would ask if there's well, you know what? Let me unwind that, because actually to do that properly, I'd have to take a motion on the bill. We're not in the posture that I'm going to ask you to do that. So while that was a good idea for a minute, I'm going to reel that back, because technically we would have to get a motion on the main bill before we could amend the bill. So that's, while it was a good idea, I think you're a pretty good parliamentarian, Senator. I'd be out of order, would I not?
You run a great meeting.
It was a good idea, but I'd be out of order. So I'm going to call.
Mr. Chairman, may I?
Yes, sir.
I think you're well intentioned in what I think you're trying to say is, I think would love for the senator to be able to come back tomorrow morning with a clean proposal, a clean bill that included that amended language. And I might suggest with that, we potentially could do, I think I'll probably leave mine as the amendment with the senator's CA. I think what you might be wanting to do is him to be able to bring a clean version of that as a committee substitute tomorrow that we would all look at. So what I might suggest is that the committee leaves here today knowing that the good senator is going to put this amendment in his CA. Just understand that that's what you guys would be looking at in the morning. I think that's what you're trying to gather.
That would probably be something we do it through the proper process. And my apologies for the committee. I was just trying to think of being open to it and about it, but I can't even take a motion for the amendment without taking a motion on the main question. And I told you I wouldn't do that today, and I'm not going to do that today. Well, I thank everyone. Those are the three items we wanted to discuss today. I do want to thank everyone. I want to thank the committee yesterday, and a little bit, if I may, Whip Park, to the needs-based question. This committee has been and continues to be focused on what I will call means-tested, merit-based scholarships with a completion grant. That the Senate wasn't able to get that on their rules because of their busy schedule. I'm sure it's not because they don't support it. And I thank the members that were able to meet yesterday afternoon so that we were able to substitute that on the Senate bill and keep that completion grant alive. That is our continued commitment out of this committee to that program, and I hope that speaks to the non-means or the means-tested merit-based programs that we continue to try to support. With that, if there's nothing further, we'll stand adjourned without objection. Hearing none, we are adjourned. Hey, well, let me, real quick, there should be a meeting notification going out. Hang with me a second. we will meet in the morning at 8 o'clock at 4. I'm pulling up the 4:06. I'm told. Somebody said 4:06 from 4:06 8 p.m. 4:06.